All right, so for today, for Bottle Basics, you might notice that I'm in a very different environment, and that's because I'm actually out on the road traveling through California at the moment with Mr. Richard Seale, who is the fourth generation of his family for distilling and blending from R.L. Seale and Company and the Foursquare Rum Distillery. We're also out on the road with his wife, Gail Seale, which if you don't already follow them on Instagram at Foursquare_Rum_Distillery, definitely highly recommend it. They are incredible people and obviously make some really incredible rums. So let's get into bottle basics for today, looking at R.L. Seale's 12-year aged rum. So first and foremost, we got to talk about the bottle itself, because I've had a number of people immediately comment on this and say, oh my gosh, what's happening? Did that bottle like melt in the window? Is it tilting over? This is so strange. So this is a bottle mold that has been in the Seale family now for 2 generations. So Richard's father, Sir David Seale, if I'm retelling this story correctly, my recollection is that he had seen a bottle similar to this in Armagnac, where the neck was actually even more distorted here. And he was just like, that's a really interesting eye-catching bottle. What is that designed after? And they said, oh, it's supposed to be like an old leather water skin. Like you would have stored your water, you would have hung on your sash. And he said, well, like looking at the Caribbean, like I think that could totally apply there too. So similar concept here. So that's the bottle itself. So it is a custom mold, but it has been in the family now for 2 generations. And in case you're curious, this is the thumbprint over here on the side to aid in the pouring of the bottle itself. Anyways, let's break down everything other than the bottle on the labels here, because that's the whole point of this thing. So when we start here at the very top, we of course have aged 12 years, and that is what I would refer to as a real age statement, meaning that by declaring age 12 years or 12 years aged, you are stating, and it is understood, that the youngest liquid in this bottle, or the youngest rum in this bottle, has been aged for 12 years. Now again, those terminologies are regulated and are protected by the TTB here in the United States. And in this instance, we're looking at aging 12 years entirely in ex-bourbon barrels and aging entirely on island in Barbados. So there's a couple of important things to note here. When I say ex-bourbon barrel, we're not just talking about like first fill ex-bourbon, so freshly emptied ex-bourbon casks. In some cases, these are barrels that have been utilized by Foursquare at the distillery in Barbados several times over for other projects, other productions. And so each successive fill will reduce the amount of barrel character that impacts the rum that's in there. And over time, you'll get more oxidative stress on the rum itself, which is going to develop very different flavor and aromatic compounds than you would get from a first fill ex-bourbon barrel. So it is all ex-bourbon, but it has been shaped over its lifetime to effectively match the profile for R.L. Seale, which in this instance, again, 12 years of age, available year-round. So by utilizing that particular methodology of multiple fill levels blended across these different batches of coming from both double retort pot still and twin column coffee still, you're getting a very kind of deep flavor profile established there. And really, if you look at the history of the Seale family, going back to 1926, which is where the name R.L. Seale's comes from, all of this is actually their tradition. They started as blenders, not as distillers. It's only the last 2 generations that have been distilling. So R.L. Seale and Company, the family company, was formed in 1926. And the Foursquare Rum Distillery, where this is now distilled and produced, wasn't founded until 1996, so 70 years later. So just an interesting point of note, which actually leads us to one of the other components here, which is Foursquare Rum Distillery on the Nectar label here, because Foursquare is actually fairly well known in the rum world nowadays. And so we thought, here's an easy way to at least help folks connect those 2 dots together in case they're familiar with Foursquare, but not necessarily the older family brand, which is R.L. Seale's. One more thing to note about the age statement before I get away from that. I mentioned it is aged entirely on the island of Barbados, so that means it is entirely tropically aged. Now, tropical maturation is very different than continental maturation. That's the first point, which is to say that if you are maturing on the island of Barbados or in the West Indies, you're going to have much higher evaporation rates than you would in, say, Kentucky, or you would, say, in France or in Europe or, Ireland, Scotland, anywhere like that. So your maturation quality and character is going to be substantially different in Barbados than it would be in a continental climate. However, when you look at the island itself, Barbados actually has one of the most unique climates in even the West Indies and the Caribbean. They're looking at 12 months out of the year being approximately 80 degrees Fahrenheit and roughly 80% humidity. And that is with minimal, what we refer to as diurnal shift, which is the day to night changing of temperatures. So as such, you have consistently high temperature, consistently high humidity, so you have really high evaporation rates. And at Foursquare in particular, they utilized open-walled warehouses for storing their barrels. Now what this does is it means the walls go up about 2/3 of the way, the top third is then left open. And that open area allows for a lot of good airflow, right? You want oxidative stress occurring. You want airflow interchange helping move some of the alcohol vapor away from those barrels as it's starting to evaporate. This is going to help further develop the flavor profile and content that you're going to get from the spirit itself. And they are getting and taking the full brunt of that unique Barbadian climate. So tropical maturation, but specifically Barbadian maturation, really important. So there's the age statement bit. We then go here, we already talked about R.L. Seale. The name of the company itself comes from Reginald Leon Seale, who is Richard's great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, 4 generations. I'm trying to do my math there real quick. Somebody can please correct me if they'd like. But Richard's basically now 4 generations back. Reginald Leon Seale started again as a rum blender, not necessarily as a distiller. And that was very much the merchant blending tradition on the island of Barbados. You essentially, as a distiller, you couldn't sell your goods direct to a consumer. You would sell them to a merchant blender who was then running a merchant grocer, much like we would find here in the United States or even in Scotland and many other countries. Merchant grocers, merchant markets were very popular. And so R.L. Seale was one of those in Barbados in Bridgetown. So we then keep going along. Finest Barbados Rum. Now, this is one of about 4 occurrences on this label that I can find where it does state Barbados Rum. And the way that I at least define Barbados Rum is that this is a rum that was distilled, matured, blended, and bottled entirely on the island. Because the significance there is if there are products in the United States you can buy today that may state Barbados Rum, but they could take the barrels off island, they could be blended down, rebarreled, taken to another country, aged somewhere else. So again, we talk about tropical versus continental maturation. So the moment it leaves the island, it's no longer Barbadian aging. And then, of course, if it's bottled off the island, there are no way to say that they didn't add something else to it. In fact, there are many products that will utilize back sweetening. They'll take things like glycerin or sweetened sugar syrup or even some oak-aged waters, things like that. There's boisé that's very popular and used in a lot of cognac and armagnac production that is used to kind of create or further evolve flavor components there. Now, however, I take a stance of I prefer non-additive spirit because some of those additives that are then put back into it are they're exogenous to the process of distillation and maturation and then addition of water. Like, to me, that is a very kind of classic spirits production approach. And that is very much what's happening here, which is also very much what I believe in when it comes to tequila as well. Now, that's my personal preference. That's not to say that there are brands out there that do things like that I don't also enjoy, but generally my personal preference has been towards spirits that do not utilize exogenous flavoring or aromatic elements. Now, I'm willing to be challenged on that, but that's just generally where my palate sits. So that's that bit for bit of a diatribe there. Obviously 750 milliliters, keep moving around here. Imported West Indies, because this is a West Indian rum from the Caribbean, and bottled at 46% ABV or 92 proof. Now, one last thing I do want to point out here is the coin itself. And on the coin, you'll see a pirate. And this isn't just any old pirate. This is a pirate that is similar to the pirate that appears on the bottle of Old Brigand. Now, if you're not familiar with Old Brigand is a brand that is very well known in Barbados, often referred to as the One-Eyed Man, and the One-Eyed Man here actually has both of his eyes open. But the point is that Old Brigand is also another brand that is produced by R.L. Seale Company, so it is just paying respects to that. And over time, you may see that coin change. So just a little tease for the future. So there we have it today. I felt very appropriate to talk about R.L. Seale's 12-year because I am fortunate enough to be spending my time with both Richard and Gail Seale of R.L. Seale and of Foursquare. So there you have it. R.L. Seale's 12-year aged ex-bourbon barrel rum, available year-round here in the United States. Cheers.